Hi, welcome back to Mr. Slover's Math. Today we're focusing on applying negative number rules and finding factors. The finding factors is more coming into play into your homework. So if you do struggle with that on tonight's homework, just make sure you stop in and see me before class and we can talk about that. But I focused most of the notes, if not all the notes, on your negative numbers. Now, yes, you can do all of this with a calculator, but we're trying to work on doing some mental math and doing stuff without use of a calculator. So the one was just reviewing what we did yesterday about talking about number lines. And here's where we're going to get into the main idea, negative number rules. So addition rule, a negative number plus a negative number equals a negative. -4 plus -1, so two negative numbers, is going to equal a negative number. You probably think, well, Mr. Slover, I'm not good at negative numbers. I need a calculator. Well, you don't need a calculator. Let's think about this a different way. Right now, it's telling us that if we're adding two negative numbers, no matter what, those two negative numbers are going to equal a negative something. So let's cover up those negatives. Let's imagine the problem saying 4 plus 1. It's a little easier. So 4 plus 1 gives me 5. Now I uncover those negatives and I just put a negative there. -5. Okay, not too bad. So now I move on to the subtraction rule. When subtracting a negative, it says it's the same as adding a negative. So I started with 3 minus -2. Well, that became, right here, the minus negative becomes a plus. So it's really saying 3 plus 2. That's going to give me 5. And these are not the only examples out there. Those are just the ones that I chose. So example 1 is you just practicing those two things. So -4 plus -7. We know we're adding two negatives. We know negative is going to be in our answer. So really we can just do 4 plus 7 to get 11. And I'll just put that negative there. Letter D, 9 minus -8. Minus negative. That becomes that positive. So it's really saying 9 plus 8. That gives me 17. All right, the back side of the notes, now we focus on the other operations, which would be multiplication and division. And they're both very similar. So if I have a negative number times a negative number, it equals a positive. So here I've got two negatives. When I multiply them together, I'm going to get a positive number. So once again, it's okay if you're not good with negatives. Cover up those two negatives and think, just what's 4 times 2? Well, I've got 4 times 2 is going to give me 8. And I know up here, because of this multiplication rule, that it says two negatives multiply to give me a positive. So for letter B, now it says I have one negative number. A negative number times a positive number equals a negative. So my example I came up with was -12 times 1. So once again, we know, based off this rule, that I'm going to get a negative answer. So I could cover up this negative here and just do 12 times 1, and then put the negative in there. Now, it doesn't matter whether the negative is the first number or the second one. As long as one of the numbers is positive and one is negative, they're going to multiply to give me a negative number. So that's what happens here. -5 times 7. One of the numbers is negative. My answer is negative. And I just do the 5 times 7 to get 35. Letter C. It says -6 times 1. You're like, well, wait a minute. It doesn't say that. But it does. It's just in parentheses. If there's no operation between your parentheses, it's assumed that it's multiplication. So it's saying -6 times 1, and I get -6. Division rule. This is the same thing as we just saw in multiplication. If I divide two negative numbers, I get a positive. -4 divided by -2, I get a positive 2. And it's the same thing for dividing one negative by a positive. I get a negative number. So 15 divided by -3 equals -5. And just like I have the note here, the negative could be on the top instead of the bottom. It doesn't matter. Just like with the multiplication, as long as one of the numbers is negative, your answer is going to be negative. Okay. So for the factors, that's going to come up on the homework. So make sure you stop in and see me and we can talk about that one. It's just you listing factors of a number. And remember that factors are two numbers that multiply to give you another. So today we just focused on using different rules. Multiplication rule of negative numbers and division rule of negative numbers are both the same. If you multiply or divide by two negatives, you get a positive. If you multiply or divide by a positive and a negative, your answer is negative. If you add two negative numbers together, your answer is negative. And then the only thing that we can say for sure about subtracting a negative